We have said this before, that if Brexit was like being a massive success, or there were positive things to talk about for Brexit, the papers or the right-wing media would be full of them. Jacob Rees-Mogg, Steve Baker would all be 24/7 on the news singing the praises of Brexit. Look how good this is. Oh my God, it's so amazing. Isn't this so good? In fact, one of the things I predicted right at the very start of the year was that there would be some sort of pro-Brexit pamphlet or bit of like newspaper booklet that would come out and say, this is like the first year of Brexit. Look how fantastic it is. And it would be basically a massive propaganda boost size. Now, we haven't seen that, which, to be honest, did actually quite surprise me because I was expecting that to be at least be a thing in the in, shall we say, the political world and the ramifications that might bring. But we've had two separate camps. The government, for one hand, has been muddling through Brexit still all this time, despite the 2019 general election saying that it was going to get Brexit done. Brexit is still very far from actually being, quote, done. As we always said back then, this is but the beginning of the beginning. And you've now got the other Brexiteers, shall we say, the non-governmental Brexiteers, who are getting very, very anxious about the direction of travel that their supposed Brexit government is taking. So we're going to dive into an article today to find out how their anxiety is high indeed in now the pro-Brexit camp. So, as always, thank you to all the people who do support the channel. Like I say, if you'd like to click the like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page and the YouTube memberships down below as well as the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you to everyone who does support the channel that way, even if you do just hit the like and share button. So, let's dive into this today. So this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of High Anxiety Spreads in the Brexit Camp. The wind seems to have gone out of Brexit's sails. The resignation of Lord Frost and an encounter with the economic reality has left Boris Johnson's European policy drifting aimlessly in the doldrums, with much speculation about the direction in which he or his successor will be blown next. Meanwhile, of course, in the pro-Brexit community, there are increasing signs of impatience at the glacial progress of change, and the impatience is mixed with more than a little anxiety. It's not real panic yet, but just give it a few months. The reason for this edginess can perhaps be seen in the recent polling figures. Support for Brexit is falling at a rate that is not far behind the PM's own plummeting approval rating. And there are understandable fears that voters will indeed soon discover that Brexit was not all it was cracked up to be. And nothing in nowhere is this now becoming more clearer than in the world's oldest weekly magazine, The Spectator. And just before we actually get into covering what The Spectator's been saying, over the past month, certainly, we've read a couple of articles from The Guardian who have been by the deputy editor of The Spectator talking about how Brexit isn't going right. So why on earth is the deputy of The Spectator, again, writing in The Guardian about how Brexit isn't going right? Interesting. Very interesting. So The Spectator's chairman, Andrew Neil, writing in the Daily Mail, a year after quitting the very moribund EU, why aren't Boris Johnson and his Brexiteers making the most of our freedom? He says the EU economies are notorious for saddling workers with higher taxes to pay for the generous health and welfare benefits, and laments that they are now appears to be in the same that now appears to be our same direction of travel too. Excellent. If that actually happens, great. That will prove for once and for all that essentially this whole idea that the Tories have for economic austerity was wrong in the first place, and that they are wrong to support that. Interesting direction of travel indeed. I hope it does go that way, because it will be fun to see what because the Conservatives, like I've said before, very ideologically split. It ain't going to end well. The journalist and broadcaster also casts aside any pretense at impartiality and points to the several mythical benefits of Brexit, aka the vaccine rollout, free ports, alcohol pricing, etc., all of which Britain could have enjoyed as an EU member, but dismisses them as hardly game-changing anyway. Neil says that the way to transform the post-Brexit Britain is via regulatory reform, to create the sort of light-touch regulatory environment in which the technologies and entrepreneurs of tomorrow are free welcome. Unfortunately for him, virtually all of today's technologies and entrepreneurs are demanding regulatory alignment with the EU in order to avoid needless trade barriers. Moreover, Neil overlooks the fact that Britain was frequently a first mover or even a world leader in tomorrow's technologies. Steel-hulled ships, steam propulsion, railways, jet engines, motor cars, motorcycles are just some good examples. We made the first computer and invented the World Wide Web. We have often been at the birth of these industries of the future, but this is not really the issue. It's holding the lead and competing where we tend to fail. Productivity, about which Neil says nothing, is our real problem, and the EU membership is key to improving it. Also last month, the Spectator editor, Fraser Nelson, wrote in The Telegraph and asking this question: was I right to support Brexit? If this is global Britain, I'm starting to wonder. Europhile Nelson was questioning the assurances given by the silver-tongued Brexiteer Daniel Hannan before Nelson threw his lot in with Vote Leave. Now, The Spectator's American-born economics editor, Kate Andrews, in her latest piece for the magazine, asks, has Boris made you better off? I suspect that she knows the answer. For most of the readers is no. And although Johnson might not have made them very much worse off yet. And of course, you'd have thought, as the economics editor, she would know that Brexit is unlikely to make anybody feel better off next year, or indeed in the years ahead as well. Andrew claims that of Johnson's plan to ride out the turbulence in Downing Street and then draw voters' attention to the economy before the start of the next election, when he will ask, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? She says Johnson is banking on the answer being a resounding yes. If so, he is bound for disappointment. Recent analysis by the Resolute Foundation shows that the PM is on track to deliver the worst growth in living standards over the course of any parliamentary term on record. And the incomes are also at risk of falling in real terms, and forecast that next year this will be defined as the year of the squeeze. And of course, even members of Johnson's own government are now sceptical. One minister tells Andrews, saying, I don't know how we're going to answer that question, are you better off, when it inevitably comes up, unless we're entirely trusting now that the state can solve all our problems, which it comprehensively, blatantly failed to do in the past. We've got very little to offer. Another Tory MP tells her, everyone is rightly focusing on the scandal right now, but the big fear is that when that all dies down, we will have unknowingly strayed into an economic no man's land. The public isn't ready for what we find there, and the government has no plan how to navigate us out. Andrew talks about the rising inflation and the looming tax increases, pointing out that the last time this indeed happened was 1981 and 1982, and there was no one under the age of 60 are very much experience of the tax and inflation double whammy set to hit next year. A Tory MP says that most people will be paying more for less, or if they're really lucky, they'll be paying more for the same. Hardly an ideal platform for the next election. The former associate director, of course, of the right-wing think tank Economic Affairs, or the IEA, and a Brexit supporter herself, ends with a very surprising question for Johnson. More than 5 years after the Brexit vote, the Prime Minister has a difficult question to ask, and also to answer. What was it all for? Andrew is talking about the biggest change with our relationship for our European neighbours for over 2 generations. What was it all for? What kind of a question is that? If you don't know what you're doing something, it isn't surprising if you've got having problems trying to make it a success. Unless Johnson can actually find a very convincing answer, she says, voters are likely to ask what the Conservatives and the Unionist Party itself is indeed for. Johnson may not need an answer, though. He will shortly be jettisoned. But the problem for the Tories is that Brexit cannot go over the side with them. The fortunes of Brexit and the party are now inextricably intertwined, so they must surely sink together. And to survive all in the long term, the moderates will eventually have to cut themselves free of a very disastrous policy that guides all the others. Again, when that happens, that will cause huge shifts itself. There will be a massive infighting of the Civil War between the moderates, who are now like, right, we can't tie our ship to Brexit anymore. It's sinking. When that question is asked, what was Brexit all for? They haven't got an answer. And because they are tied so much to Brexit, even the Conservative Party itself is tied to that, the moderates are going to split. And remember, much of the moderates were indeed purged from the parliamentary party, but they are still very much in the Conservative non-parliamentary party, where they now sit and are currently, I very much suspect, biding their time. So this article has singled out the Spectator, but you can find very similar examples in most of the pro-Brexit press. There seems to be a growing nervousness among the Brexit cheerleaders, and quite a few whistling the dark articles to try and keep the spirits up. One from Matthew Lynn at The Telegraph is a prime example. A year on from the Brexit trade deal, the doom-mongers got it so wrong. If that were true, one wonders that Neil, Nielsen and Andrews, what have they even been writing about? The sorry truth is that there were no big wins to be delivered, no miracles coming into view. Those elusive benefits of leaving the EU were only ever half glimpsed by the candidates through the dithering smoke and fog of a Tory leadership campaigns, whether they even declared it or not, and usually for their own personal advantage. So no sooner has the new leadership redecorated the Downing Street flats than the fog will again close in, and the benefits will disappear once more. Finally, see this tweet from Nigel Farage's former deputy at UKIP and later a Tory MEP, David Campbell Bannerman, saying these. So this was in a response to a guy called Nick Tyrone, basically saying that 42% of people who voted leave in 2016 will now have a negative view of how Brexit has turned out so far, according to a new opinion poll. That's a staggering figure. With him then saying, weasel words, weasel these words. It means that they are frustrated. More is being done to deliver on the benefits of Brexit, e.g. border control, cutting red tape, sorting Northern Ireland Protocol. 2022 will be the year of a fuller Brexit delivery. So, of course, this is what we've seen time and time again. This isn't Brexit, but don't worry, you'll see next year. Don't worry, 2023 will be the year we get proper Brexit. Don't worry, 2024 will be the year we get proper Brexit. Just hold on. Again, 42% of people turning against their vote is a staggering number. However, this is more hopeful than anything else. There will be, of course, no fuller delivery next year. Only more of the same, the slow decline in trade, growth, living standards, and influence. And that is really where we are at this moment in time. It is not going well. Brexit is not going well. It has not had its, shall we say, first inaugural year go very well at all. You may even remember, of course, us going back in 2019 seeing that the pandemic was coming, saying, why on earth are you going to do Brexit when we've got this pandemic on the way that is going to cause potentially a lot of harm? Let's at least wait and see what happens. No, we've got to plow on and do Brexit. And of course, well, here we are today. And like I say, next year, I've been saying it all year, really. Next year is going to be, I think, the big test for a lot of people, and it's going to make a lot of people's next lives year a whole lot more difficult, especially if we are going back to those 1981 and 1982 times where next year is going to be dubbed, already predicting that it's going to be the year of the squeeze. And then the Conservatives, who very often stand on the platform of we are the guardians of the UK's economic foundations, they've got nothing to offer. Absolutely nothing. They will not have a way out. They will only have more austerity, when the proper way out will be to spend money. But of course, Conservatives do not want to spend money, because then that sort of disproves their entire ideology that they stand by. So, yeah, as always, things are not going to go well next year. Even if they jettison Boris, whoever's next will face exactly the same problems and will not be able to solve them. Because currently in the Conservative Party, there really is no talent on those benches. Not one, because they all got kicked out during the Great Brexit Purge. All the moderates got given the boot from the Parliamentary Party. So, yeah, it's only downhill from here for the Conservatives. So, but as always, we'll have to see what happens in this. And their decline is linked to Brexit. You can't escape that. You cannot escape it. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. And of course, we'll see you all next time.